The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guests and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of S4, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast or reproduction of this broadcast or podcast without express written consent of S4 is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Because we don't understand how life formed, it is difficult to estimate this probability. The likelihood of a complex molecule like DNA being created by random collisions of atoms in a primordial ocean is fantastically small. In an infinite universe, it would happen in some places, but they would be very far apart. If we want to find advanced intelligent life, our best bet is to listen for radio signals.
Look up to the stars and the forests that surround. Do you see them? Do you hear them? Are they there? SpacedOutRadio.com presents S4 with Forest Moon Paranormal's Eric Cooper and friends. Also, take the time to join the Forest Moon Paranormal Facebook group.
I knew I should have made a left turn at Albuquerque.
Conspiracy, Area 51, Dogman, Ghosts, Cover-Ups, UFOs. The hidden will reveal itself.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go live on S4 with Eric Cooper.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to S4 with Eric Cooper, broadcasting live from the beautiful mountains of Concrete, Washington. Tonight we are talking about abductions, both current and historical. And I do mean seriously historical tonight. It's going to go pretty deep, so this is going to be a fun one. Tonight on our panel we have Eric Markham, our FMP scientist, Michael Hall of UFO I-Team, myself, Corey Reese, and your host, Forest Moon Paranormal Zone, Mr. Eric Cooper.
Hey, how you doing tonight, everyone? And yes, welcome to S4. And yeah, it's going to be a great show tonight. Unfortunately, R. Keith Andrews couldn't make it tonight because he had other plans. But, hey, we have Michael Hall from UFO I-Team. Awesome guy. He was at our joint team meeting today. And for those that missed the meeting today, it is actually, I've shared it, but Michael actually did a Facebook Live from the meeting. So you can actually watch the most of the meeting from the FMP website or the Facebook group, as well as the UFO I-Team page. And you're also going to see Michael Hall next weekend, April 8th, at our training here in Concrete. We are doing Paranormal in the Loft, which him being the guru in legal issues as Peter Davenport's lawyer for the last 30 years plus years or so. So it's going to be awesome. So how's everyone doing tonight?
I'm
Good
doing
evening.
great, Eric. Thank you for having me on with the preacher even.
Oh, you're always an awesome guest. So anytime.
Yeah.
I got to get a quick shout out too. It's Irma Bowd's birthday today. Well, it's over now, but we got to give her a birthday shout out. Happy birthday, Irma. She is our station manager for KSVU, the local station up here that actually plays S4 for us. So everyone give her a great big birthday welcome.
Happy birthday.
So, how far back have you researched abductions, Michael?
Well, you know, there are classic stories throughout history. You know, I always kind of go back to the Old Testament and sacred scriptures to, as you well know, the story of Ezekiel by the river Chebar, and some of those other stories that sound exactly like a modern-day UFO abduction in some cases. There's the story of Enoch, of course. When he walked with God, he was no more, taken up in
right.
whirlwind and those kinds of stories. Now, you know, I actually was for quite a few years the vice president of Puget Sound Christian College. I have always been interested in UFOs, and I have studied the Bible, of course, but I swear that some of those things, I don't believe this is sacrilegious to say this. I think some of the interpretations of those stories that have that made it through the editing process of the Bible give us a real good insight on the fact that I believe we've been watched and maybe tweaked and definitely abducted for thousands of years on this planet.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. I completely agree. We were talking about that today at the meeting. That you've got the Bible, you've got the Mahabharata, you've got the Quran even talks about UFOs. But if you look at religious texts in general, they all go into the UFO field, all of them. And
we were talking about the Vedas,
right.
Indian scriptures and the fantastic descriptions of a war between the gods, even.
Right.
So all of those, all of the cultures on the planet have stories and histories that their god came from the sky somehow. And then, of course, there's Genesis 6:4, where the sons of God come down and find the women of men, the daughters of man, fair, and took them as their wives. That's a pretty interesting abduction story right there.
Yeah, and it's ironic that so many religious people, even though it's right there in black and white in their text, but it's all due to interpretation, I mean, obviously, but they still won't believe in UFOs. They won't believe in abductions happening. They think everything is demonic. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think when you can't really fit these paradigms into a narrative that you are pushing, basically, a lot of religions have their own dogma, that they need to figure out how they're going to explain some of these issues. And so I think some of the interpretations are a little stretched when you're dealing with scripture. Even if you go to the first civilizations that are known to man at this point, the Sumerians, those kinds of things. They've got all the same kind of stories of these gods coming down and commingling with man, teaching them technology and agriculture and mathematics, science. I mean, even the Dogon knew about the star Sirius, and of course they had no technology in their culture. So these things, to me, as a lawyer, these are proof you could prove in a court of law if you had to.
Totally agree. And Michael's breaking up a little bit there. I know we were having Skype issues from the beginning before the show, so hopefully Skype don't give us too many issues here. So going back from documentation, in Torino, or Turin, Italy, was an alien hotspot in 100 BC. And there was a Julius Obsequens who reported a round object like a globe that flew from west to east. In 91 BC, there was a similar report. 42 BC, he reports a sound like a missile rose from with a great noise from the earth and soared into the sky. Now, there's a lot of hotspot from back in that age in Italy. Have you ever done any research on the Italy hotspots?
I have not studied that era very much, although I do hear, Rome is in Italy, obviously, and I have heard the stories of flying shields coming out of that era as well. Yeah. And of course, if you look at a shield, you throw it like a frisbee, it's going to look exactly like a saucer. So those are fascinating because if they are describing something they can't understand, but they say it looks like a shield, that's a pretty good description as far as firsthand corroboration of something that's flying through the air. So that's fascinating that you've done that research to find out some of those historic archaeohistoric sightings.
Well, it goes a lot. So a lot of my research comes from Dante Santori, and the research he's done over the 20 plus years. He's the one who interpreted the Alien Races book that was found in Russia, and so a lot of my documentation comes from his work. But he goes. There was and we're going to get into that for real quick. The Order of the Black Swan. Now, it's hard to find documentation about these guys because there was also an Order of the Black Swan that was a political. Now, are there ties to it? There could be. But the Order of the Black Swan was actually an abduction, an alien combat team, I guess you could call them. And it goes back to the 13th century. Torino was Italy's first capital in 1861, home to the House of Savoy, Italy's first royal family. So the Torini were an ancient Celto-Ligurian Alpine people. They're rarely mentioned in history. 1030 AC in Torino, 12 girls were abducted by aliens, and they belonged to 3 different families. So as time went by, the families gave up looking for their kids, with the exception of Felicia Selvo, who was the mother of Monica, one of the girls that went missing. She was 12. Now, her and her 2 sons traveled looking for her daughter, their sister, obviously. This was back in the 11th century. And I believe it was the Middle East they went to. And it's funny because in the Middle East back then, aliens were a common phenomenon. And they were told about the Mater, which is an alien race that we've talked about extensively on the show. She heard about the Mater, because there were creatures that came and, quote, came to get the daughters of men, these heavenly creatures. And she's told about the mater. She returned to Torino in 1034 AD and got the three families together. They formed the Ordine del Signo Nero, otherwise known as the Order of the Black Swan, and they made they made a family pact of revenge. They would fight the abductors 1,000 generations per each of the missing girls. So why the Black Swan? Well, the Black Swan is symbolic of a guard dog. So they've been, they're headquartered out of Torino, Italy. They've been fighting aliens since then. Obviously, very, I hate using the word secret society, but obviously a secret society when you're known to fight aliens.
Yeah. Wow.
So as far as a documentation, I'd say that's the first that I found documented of extensive abduction. Because you're talking 12 children that were taken in 13th century. So it tells you how far back to go. Now I know you work with abductees, and one of the common denominators with abductions is it's generational. You talk to an abductee, and 9 out of 10 times their parents have been abducted, their grandparents have been abducted, their great grandparents, and so on and so forth. And what they're supposed to be doing is checking for genetic anomalies. And then of course, you've got the gray hybrid program, which is trying to get human alien genetics mixed.
Yeah. I'll bet Markham has some input on that from the scientific analysis.
Well,
we still got Markham. There you go.
Well, I was looking into that, and man, it goes. Thing is, with the Aboriginal people of Australia have this fantastic tradition with the ETs, and they've got their abduction stories, but their timeline doesn't, it's like, I don't think they gave a crap what year it was up until the whites invaded their island. So the timing is a little weird. But like Michael was saying, the Dogon people saw stars they knew about stars within the Pleiadian constellation, that it wasn't until after, Galileo invented the telescope that these things were seen by Westerners.
Yes, and wasn't it the fact, Markham, that even the Dogons said that their god came from the Pleiades?
Oh, there's a bunch. Yeah, there's a lot of traditions in which the gods come from, and I don't know if it's that the ETs actually come from the Pleiades or, face it, if you're in the northern hemisphere, Orion and the Pleiades are one of the more striking. You notice them when they're in the sky. It's like, ooh, yeah, look at that. So maybe that the constellation of Orion and the open cluster of the Pleiades just attracts more attention. And see people, when they build their mythology, they say, oh, our gods came from there.
But I thought the Dog Star came from the Sirius star system. Or is that the same as the Pleiades? I'm not an astronomer. I need correction here. Yeah.
I'm not sure. Sirius B, I think, is the Dog Star.
Yeah. And what's funny about that isn't that also, because we did this show, almost 2 years ago now, I think, wasn't it, Markham, where we actually talked about the Founding Fathers and how they designed the the White House and the Washington D.C. in relation to the Dog Star, wasn't it?
No, I think. Oh God, let's see. The dogs. I think what the thing is with Sirius B, it's the brightest star in our night sky. When it's in the night sky, it's the brightest. So it attracts. People think, oh, the North Star, because so much of what navigation and early history is based on being able to know where the North Star is. It's faint.
Right.
It's hard to see.
And
the Dog Star, Sirius, is boom. It's there like a flare in its magnitude, negative 4.6.
John's in the chat room saying Pleiades is in the Taurus star system. This is where we need your astronomer, Michael.
Yeah, we need Dr. Marilyn Childs here on the line, the archaeoastronomer.
The cluster. So it's in the constellation of Taurus. Yeah. To me, it's harder to think of the Taurus. When I'm looking at the Pleiades, I'm not thinking of the larger picture. I'm always focused on the Pleiades. So yeah, he's right. It's probably one of the closest star clusters to Earth.
Now I got to throw this in here real quick too, because we were talking about this in the meeting today, and we're going to take Michael's advice. But in July, we're actually going to do a sky watch. Now during the daytime, I'm going to see about getting our Bigfoot guy to actually do a Bigfoot lecture during the daytime. We might do some Bigfoot hunting, and then at night we're doing our sky watch. And if Michael can pull his strings, we'll actually have an astronomer with us that can actually point out the star systems, the brightest stars, that kind of thing, and make it a highly educational day and night. It's going to be a camp out, a one-night camping trip in the mountains, in the stars. And ideally, we'll see a UFO. So,
I'll bet you will. And that would be Dr. Marilyn Childs again. I'll bet she would love to be able to come out and kind of share some of the knowledge that she has, not only with the star systems they are where they're located now, but some of your historic, stories could be a whole different context when you talk with an archaeoastronomer about, what did it look like 13th century and beyond, as far as the stars go.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't wait, because, just the planning of these kind of events is fun, let alone actually sit and enjoy them.
Yes.
And it is going to be a fundraiser. Obviously, the key the core members won't have to pay, but we're going to advertise it as a fundraiser. We're going to have if we can work it out right. Obviously, the details are in the works, but we'll have a salmon dinner and a lot of education, and it'll be well worth the fee.
Oh man! Well, you can count me in on that one.
Oh yeah. So, getting back to the star systems. Let's see here. And Jay's wishing he could be here for the event. You've got a few months to plan for it. I can't remember where Jay is, though. So here in a little bit, I think the second hour we'll actually start talking about some of the alien races that are abducting, because there are 16 different races that we have documented that are abducting for various reasons. Some for science, some for social, some for, snacks, things of that nature. Let's go into some of the signs and symptoms of an abduction. If you want to take that, start that off, Michael.
Yeah. Of course, I think probably one of the easier symptoms or signs could be people having reoccurring dreams of, aliens, of being, taken aboard a craft those kinds of things. With Grant Cameron, the famous Canadian ufologist, now saying that everything is consciousness, and everything is connected through consciousness. Who knows whether these dreams that we're having, whether they're lucid or not, are doorways to another reality. So that's one of the symptoms, of course. And then you've got, we were talking a little bit earlier about the street light interruption syndrome, the slider syndrome, where supposedly people who have been abducted or had close contact with aliens have this ability to develop psi powers that they did not have. For instance, they'll glitch computers when they walk by them. They can't wear a watch because the watch stops. Or they're driving.
Agreed. These are the people you'll find their computers last maybe 6 months or less, and they go through all kinds of electronics. Now, I do have a theory about that. I believe the implants have something to do with that. I know consciousness and energy of the individual can alter that. And yeah, you'll find the street lights go out when they walk by them, that kind of thing. I think in many of those cases you'll find the implant affects that as well.
You might very well be right there, Eric, because I remember when Dr. Roger Lear was alive, and he was removing those implants, up to 17 different patients. By the way, if the audience has not seen the movie, it's on Netflix already, called Patient 17. It's a phenomenal story, a good documentary of the last.
Oh man, yeah, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that one yet. I have to check that one out for sure.
Yeah,
and totally agree. As far as the recurring dreams, I always tell clients start a dream journal, and you want the date, the time, the weather, and a very good description of the dreams you've been having. And you can see patterns. You can see if there's certain days, certain times you're having these dreams, and that's the easiest way to start getting conscious recall. Because personally, I prefer conscious recall over regressive hypnosis. That's just personal preference. With regressive hypnosis, you got to be careful with leading questions. There's been studies done where hypnotherapists have taken normal people that never had an abduction before, and these people walked out completely convinced they were abductees. So I know some people love regressive hypnosis. I'm just not one of them. I think you have to be. It's a real fine fence you walk on with that one.
Yeah, well, there's a reason why they don't allow hypnosis as evidence in a court of law at this point.
Right.
So that's exactly what the issues could be: the confabulation, the leading questions, and those kinds of things. Of course, there are professionals that do this, and Dolores Cannon has a whole study of how she trains her folks that do this. If it's done right and has some corroborative questions being asked, you possibly can corroborate what comes out in a hypnotic session with reality.
Mm-hmm.
Those are interesting stories to me when they are able to corroborate certain things that other people have said that they would not have known about, and they kind of correlate with different abduction syndromes. But you got to be careful about that for sure.
Well, it borders on being spectral evidence. When you get to that, it's basically hypnosis is the alchemy of the mind anyway. I mean, you can have somebody with a deep-rooted enough psychosis or even a deep enough rooted fantasy that you can bring out. We don't understand enough about memory and about a lot, there's just a lot of things about the mind we don't know, and to open it up with the hypnosis and basically pull the filters out of the way, that's dangerous. You don't know what you're going to get. I mean, there's been men put in jail because there was a real famous case where a guy spent, I forgot how many years in jail. I think it was actually on death row because the way his daughter was questioned, it was some kind of regression hypnosis thing, and she said her father killed a babysitter or some such crap. And it turned out that he did no such thing. It was just that the psychologist had a axe to grind and used leading questions and implanted a false memory into this girl's mind. And, somebody almost got sent to the electric chair for that.
Yeah. Well, and, you have to look back in the 70s and 80s. Actually, I think it was more the 70s when, all those people that came out and talked about ritualistic, cult activity, satanic cult activity, and started not a pandemic,
epidemic?
A fear. Everyone was paranoid and panicky over, this ritualistic killings of the satanic cult, and it didn't happen. It was again, kind of...
It was sort of a group like a, group think. Everybody, that's the first thing anybody thought of. It's Satanist, it's Satan. I mean, they were even making fun of it on Saturday Night Live with the church lady. Maybe it's Satan, mass hysteria is what
there you go. That's what I was looking for. And now getting to abductees, you have to be careful. There's a certain pattern of symptoms I do look at because some of them can be medical, some of them can be psychiatric, and some of them actually fit the pattern of abuse as children. So you have to be careful. You have to be careful when you're talking to an abductee or a reported abductee. Now, if they fit all the patterns, then now you can start talking dreams. You can start talking, and one of the first things a lot of them report is seeing a UFO, and then seeing the UFO leave, and they're missing 2 hours of time. That's a common one. And then, of course, they wake up with nosebleeds. They wake up with scoop marks. Now, to explain a scoop mark's like you took a little tiny spoon and scooped skin away to make kind of like a hole in your skin. Not like a puncture mark.
Melon baller, only smaller.
There you go.
Right.
A miniature melon baller. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when you start talking nosebleeds, the first thing I ask is, do you have high blood pressure? Do you have blood? Are you taking blood thinners? Does it happen at certain periods of nighttime? I mean, was the air dry? Things of that nature. Same with bruising. Are you anemic? Does your spouse or does somebody you're sleeping with kick you while you're sleeping? Or you always look for the mundane. That's the priority.
Look for, are they on Coumadin or something? I'm on since I had my stent put in, I'm on some kind of, I've actually had to go out and buy tampons because my nose will bleed so badly that I have to have something to stop it up.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of once your platelet function goes out of the way. So but I know people that would say, okay, your nose is bleeding. Oh my God, you're an abductee. No, I'm on medication that keeps my platelets from working.
Well, I still remember we did our first abduction show 2 years ago, and you're panicking over 25 of the signs that you were fitting.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. It's like, yep, got those, got that. I'm taking them off as you're reading them. It's like, oh, sure. Especially when you get up to some of the more, some of the off-kilter ones, like, street lights go out or turn on when you go, yeah, I got that. There's one by the house even to this day that, and I thought, well, maybe in one car my headlights were out of alignment, but it even does it in a car that I know the headlights are lined up good. So
yeah. Well, Markham, let me follow up on that one because that's a fascinating story. I have had that same experience where a certain street light in my neighborhood will always go on or off when I go by it, but it doesn't seem to happen with the other ones in the area. It's just this one street light. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, there's one street light, and there was one in New Bern that would go out every time, But then I think about it, I ran sort of, is it just that light? Because without thinking about, here's the scientist in me, okay, what time of day is this happening? What is the sun, what time of year is this happening? Is it maybe just got a weak sunlight sensor in it? Does it have a weak sensor? Is the glare of my headlights enough to make, there's so many variables to track down, but I've had more than one area I lived in. I've had that, one light that just seems to react to me.
Well, my theory on that is that I believe there are certain street lights that maybe are sensitive to certain electromagnetic effect waves, and others aren't. For instance, if it's like you said, if it's a new light bulb, if it's a new LED, if it's a mercury vapor, light, they might be more or less sensitive than other lights. And I'm wondering if it's tripped by the specific brainwave that you are giving off, and it only affects that certain light because that light is susceptible to that frequency for some reason. I've seen it happen to myself with a light that was in the alley, street light that was in the alley of my law office, and I used to play games with it. I would peek my head out the door in the middle of the night not in the middle of the night, but when it was dark, at certain times, just to try to see if it would work at different times during the night. And sure enough, this one street light, almost invariably, every time I opened up the door to peek out around the corner, it wouldn't go through walls necessarily, but if I went outside, it would pop off. Kind of strange.
The thing is, if we could nail that down and have cause and effect, what a fantastic detector. What a first step in defining because right now there's no, other than anecdotal evidence, there's nothing that says that the human brain broadcasts on any spectrum. If we could find, that connection between the brain waves and that light, there's our detector. There's a detector. Then we can say, there's an app for that.
Well, here's exactly an app for that. But Coop and I were talking today earlier at the meeting about this interesting, simple experiment that you can do with your own brain. That if you take your car key fob for your car, and it's the kind potentially that would just open the car up, at a distance. And if you were, for instance, went to a shopping mall parking lot, walked as far away as you possibly could to where the key fob will not work. It'll work at a certain distance, and then beyond that, it will not open your car or turn the lights on or anything. So that distance where it doesn't work, and then if you actually put the key fob supposedly to your brain, your forehead, and bingo, the thing works. So the idea being that your brain does send off some kind of frequency and maybe is able to even boost the signal of certain energy systems to work at a distance. I think that's a fascinating study I've heard about.
Well, that goes back to the old rabbit ear TV. The body actually acts as a bit of an antenna. So when you hold the key fob up to your head, you're amplifying. So, God, it depends though. What are those things running on now? They used to be like an infrared. Now I guess they're a radio frequency of some kind.
Yeah.
The keyless fobs have evolved over time.
Yeah, they're all RF now.
RF, yeah, okay.
Well,
so if it's RF and you're holding it up to your head, you're basically acting as an antenna and boosting its signal.
Interesting. You remember when we were kids and the rabbit ears had to be adjusted and your dad was like tired at the end of the day and you didn't want to get out of the couch, so he asked you to go over and do it, and then when it worked and you're right in the middle of a great ball game, he wants you to stand there and hold the thing.
Yeah, and I think that was, I'm not sure if it was the human body was acting as a filter or if it was just acting as an RF sync or something.
Yeah, and then you
you had to raise your arm and move your arm around.
Obviously, yeah. Then you were obviously becoming an antenna element. But my next chapter in my shortwave book I'm studying is going to be about antennas and how they affect signal capture. So that'll be fun to get into.
Oh, definitely. Well,
we got Orb Gardner says the fob thing doesn't work.
Oh, interesting.
I'm going to try it. I've got that kind of fob. I can on my Jeep. I'll see what happens. I'll get as far back.
That'll be a good.
I'll get as far back as I'll go until it doesn't work anymore. Hit it a few times when I get to that point, and then step back a little further. Take a couple more steps back and just see if it.
Yes. Dr. Roger Lear, who did the alien implant removals, he did some studies on the actual implants once they were removed, and I believe he said that there was a low RF frequency that was supposedly a deep space communication hertz that was emanating from these implants.
Radio frequencies. They were actually picking up radio frequencies with some of the equipment he was using.
Yeah, I remember hearing that back in the old Art Bell days, talking about that was only used for deep space communication, that particular frequency.
I believe.
Jesse Ventura on Conspiracy Theory actually did an episode on that as well, and they showed, because they actually had a frequency reader, and they actually showed the device picking up radio frequency off the device.
I believe they call those subspace frequencies, do they not?
I'll be honest. I'm actually looking at it right now. Because I remember hearing about that there was actually, he was detecting because people were saying, you're just digging out some piece of old metal that had been in somebody's body for years and had been, calcified by the body and that it wasn't really implants, and then he came up with that. There's a frequency coming off of it that is the same as is used for deep space, communications, like what you do for satellites and stuff. So
yeah, when we send the probes out to Jupiter and those kind of things, there's a certain frequency they use to communicate with them. You know, and also, I think you remember this, is that when they analyzed the isotopic ratios of these things that they were taken out of people's bodies, that supposedly they weren't even created in this galaxy. There's just no way that they could be man-made.
Well, some of that come out, and then some of that they walked some of that back. I mean, that's the problem with a mythology like with Roger Lear. There's truth, then there's what got embellished, whether he intended for it to. And I don't think Roger Lear, Dr. Lear himself, ever embellished anything. I think if he had said it, it was because somebody he trusted gave him false information. And there again, are they giving him false information to make him lose credibility, or were they just trying to, the thing, you know, with believers, instead of just straying with the straight facts, a lot of times the believers feel like to make it just that little bit more believable, you got to add a little bit to it. It's sort of like it's sort of how mythologies and tall tales are built.
Well, the thing with the implants, because they actually showed one specific surgery that was done. It was an implant taken out of the guy's foot, I believe it was. And generally speaking, when the body gets a foreign body, and you can verify this too, Markham, but the body will expel foreign bodies. Whereas the implants,
sometimes it won't.
Sometimes it won't. No.
I've got a chunk of pencil lead in my wrist that my body just actually never came out. It just calcified. The body will build a calcium capsule around it, and then it'll just be embedded in the tissue.
Mm-hmm. With implants, though, they're never expelled. They're always, they have nerves that are wrapped around them. And with the specific video they were showing, you could actually see the implant trying to move away from the tweezers that he was using to try to grab it.
That was the freakiest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah,
is that the one where they were trying to take? Was that where they were trying to get Whitley Strieber's implant out and it kept moving away?
This wasn't Whitley Strieber. This is a nobody. It was just the guy that wanted the implant taken out. And you know, unfortunately, we don't have any surgeons that have taken Dr. Lear's place. FMP has one facial surgeon in India, Rahul, but unless the implant is in his degree of surgery, he couldn't take it out. It's got to be in his scope. But nobody stepped up to take Dr. Lear's place, and that's unfortunate.
Well, some of the problems with that is when you look at the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology is who did Lear's testing for his implant.
Mm-hmm.
And their final report said that they were composed of commonly found elements, iron or aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
But when they described some of these elements, the lab report made reference to the composition of meteors, like meteoric iron, which in the area that they're in, that could have made, that would have been a natural occurring, sliver or something. Well, Dr. Lear took that to mean, oh my God, these things have extraterrestrial origin. Well, pretty much almost everything has extraterrestrial origins when it comes to minerals, because the Earth was bombarded by, meteors and stuff for billions of years. So,
right.
But that doesn't. That's still if it's true, and trying to actually nail down a source about the radio frequencies is hard.
Mm-hmm.
That
now
was real hard.
Now to get to implants with abductees, back in the 90s and back in the 90s, the common spot was the nasal cavity, and that's what was causing the nosebleeds. And then of course you had the arms, the legs, the hands, the feet, and the base of the neck. Those are the more common spots. And of late, in the last 10 years, you've got a very unique implant that is actually in the brain and causes holograms. Have you heard about those ones, Michael?
Wow. I have not heard about that. So, in other words, in the pineal, close to the pineal gland or between the hemispheres?
Oh, God, I'd have to pull up a case file, but because I can't remember specifically. Do you remember that one, Markham? That's when you sent us the brain panel diagram. I believe it's in the frontal lobe.
What's that?
And the implant that causes the holograms.
If it's something visual, it would be occipital lobe, which if you take your ear, you touch your ear and slide your hand back, that process back there, that the occipital's back there, down below around the ear. It's toward the back of the skull. That's where you would get something visual, because that's the visual center of the brain.
And
I think
this particular
behavioral
client
would be frontal.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. I got you. So this particular client, there's been a couple different clients that have described this particular phenomena. And so what Keith is saying, there's a specific race that uses this, because every race has their own implants, their own types, their own purposes, and their own parts of the body where they put them. They're generally used for tracking. They're generally used for information downloads, essentially. But this particular one actually feeds information to and from the race across dimensions, going by what Keith has described.
Mm-hmm.
It can be shut down, but, I kind of walk a fence, because do I really, depending on the intention of the race, do I really want to shut off downloads?
Exactly.
Not really. If it's a positive race, then it might be kind of detrimental that this individual's getting those downloads, unless of course it's affecting them in some way.
Well, and think of this: what if the alien race, even if it's not necessarily a benevolent race, even if it's a malevolent race, who's to say that they don't put some kind of a supervisory circuit? You remove the implant and it causes a cascade failure, or sort of a deterrent, a tamper, a deterrent to tamper. You could, with the best of intentions, pull this thing out, pull this thing out, and next thing you know, somebody's having a mental breakdown because there was there was a virus installed or some kind of thou shalt not, make an example of somebody not to play with their implants.
Yeah.
Daryl Sims has stories just like that where, he worked with Dr. Roger Lear back in the old days, and he's still around as the alien hunter, doing the implant issue as well. He's got case studies where people have actually taken the implants out or had them removed, and their health just took a tank right away or shortly thereafter. So sometimes the theory could be that they're actually doing something to stabilize this person with medical information or, some kind of early warning system, or being actually even some have said that they were healed with these things.
Exactly. Agreed. Let's see, where are we going? So with implants, what we do actually is disable them, which triggers a response with the particular race. And we're coming close to our break. But what I do want to talk about is the gray hybrid program, because that's a whole different set of symptoms. Which, to hit that briefly, usually with women, they would wake up, they'd have a triangular shaped set of puncture marks on the lower abdomen. And that was the first sign, which would be followed by pregnancy, which you might be able to clarify this, Michael. If I remember right, the gestation was about 2 months. They would be re-abducted, and there would be a false pregnancy, meaning the fetus would be missing. Now, it would be documented as not an aborted fetus, but a missing fetus.
Right.
And then they'd be retaken. And they would actually wake up with dreams of being on a spacecraft again, and they would be encouraged to hold basically a hybrid of an alien human baby.
That's a classic story, exactly.
Right, and that was known as the Gray Hybrid Program.
Yes.
All right, gentlemen. It is time for us to go for a little break. We should definitely jump back into this a little bit more probably when we get back from that. But when we come back from break, we will continue our discussion of abductions, both current and historical. Tonight on our panel, we have Eric Markham, our FMP scientist. We have Michael Hall of UFO I-Team. Myself, Corey Reese, and Eric Cooper of Forest Moon Paranormal. Join us every Saturday night at midnight Pacific Standard Time. You can find us on Spreaker.com, SpacedOutRadio.com, and the Fringe FM. And now for you local listeners, again, we've got it set up on KSVU. You can catch our shows, KSVU 90.1 on your FM dial on Saturdays from 10 p.m. to midnight. Check out Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott Monday through Friday. Spaced Out Weekend with Joe Roop Saturdays, and Elizabeth Anglin and Cosmic Passport on Sundays. All of those at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Also check out the Fringe FM with shows like Lighting the Void with Joe Roop and a plethora of other good shows. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter online only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed on tonight's show by tonight's hosts and guests are not necessarily those of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays, Spaced Out Sundays, or spacedoutradio.com. Listener discretion is advised. And now back for hour number 2, we have Corey Ruiz, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal, and S4. You can find Forest Moon Paranormal on Facebook. And for more information on S4, visit spacedoutradio.com. And now, here's Eric Cooper and Corey Ruiz.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. For those of you just joining us tonight, we are having a wonderfully lively discussion about abductions, both past and current. Tonight on our panel, we have Eric Markham and Michael Hall. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody, welcome back.
All right. And so to carry on our discussion, now we were talking about the abduction and the signs and symptoms. And, Trip is sitting on the edge of his seat, and he wants to hear about some of the strange stories. And so we've got cases where people woke up, they didn't have their pajamas on, or they had the wrong pajamas on. They put pajamas they didn't own. Can you imagine waking up and you turn to your husband and he's got panties on? These are some of the strange things that happen with abductees sometimes. I think the freakiest that abductees experience is waking up with a dream that they're walking in the woods, and they pull back the blankets, and they have mud on their sheets, leaves on their sheets, and their feet and legs are all muddy, like they, really did walk in the woods. That's common. There's another case I remember reading about where the entire car was abducted, was taken. And when they got returned, they have missing time, and all of a sudden they're just driving down the freeway, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, all of a sudden they're driving down the wrong side of the freeway. And, the aliens realized their mistake, they re-abducted the car, and they fixed it. There's another case where a college student, every once in a while you will get an abductee that, for whatever reason, they have full control. And generally speaking, when you're abducted, you have no control. You can't move. They have you paralyzed, essentially. But for whatever reason, this particular abductee was able to get control, and he punched one of the aliens. They returned him. Well, sometimes you can chalk things up to a drunken stupor, or you went to a party and you woke up drunk, whatever. This particular case, the student woke up in the college yard naked. Doesn't know how he got there. Well, was it a drunken party? Maybe, but again, he had memories of aliens, so it was an abduction that he got control. They removed him and they put him back in the yard, not back in his dorm, but there you go. Now, getting to the large eyes, because that's another common one. And that'll stem from childhood fear of being scared of owls, being scared of deer, being scared of rabbits, animals with large eyes, because they'll use what's called a screen memory. They can mask themselves to be anything, but they can't hide the eyes. They have large wraparound eyes, or large almond-shaped eyes in general. And so they'll mask themselves, but they'll come across the deer, rabbits, owls. So oftentimes, as children, they remember seeing owls in the window. And these are actually, you come to find out, they're abduction experiences. So that's another common sign. And I think we pretty much wrapped up the gray hybrid signs and symptoms. Again, these are women that remember waking up, or not waking up, but having dreams of being on craft, and then they had a pregnancy. The fetus came up missing 2 months later, and then they have the dreams of being back on the ship and holding alien babies, essentially. Now, why is this happening?
Yeah, probably the theory of this hybrid generation, or new person that is being created for some reason. Potentially, there are a couple theories in that regard. Is that the either aliens or time travelers from our distant future are coming back to get DNA that they need for their own survival. That's one theory. Another theory could be that they are slowly but surely trying to take over this planet, and they're not doing it with a war. They're doing it with a hybrid population that's going to eventually be more like them than us.
And the other theory I've heard is they are trying to get emotion into their race.
There you go. Yeah.
Now, one story I've heard over the years is there was and I don't remember if they were on Mars, I don't remember which planet they were on, but there was a very large war between the reptilians and the Greys. Basically, the Greys were sterilized, and this is their way of trying to repopulate their race.
Interesting.
That's one theory I've heard. And like you said, yeah, trying to integrate or you're trying to perpetuate their race is cross genetics with humans. And we do have a couple of cases where, and we're actually going to be talking at Paracon. We have Christina George talking about hybrid children and black-eyed children and how they're connected. So I look forward to that lecture, actually. So what races are abducting and why? And I do have my list in front of me. The Greys, obviously, for the hybrid program. Now, reptilians, there's multiple races of reptilians, some good, some bad. Some of them, we are a snack. These are the abductions that, well, they don't come back. You've got the Mater, which is a parasitic race. They are the worst of the worst. I'm kind of tending to lean that they aren't the worst of the worst. There's worse ones out there. They conduct more abductions than any other race. They have intentions to colonize the Earth, but due to the Council of Five, they have not been successful. You've got the Aphim, come from the constellation of Lyra. I'm trying to remember what they're doing there. They have colonized 10 planets non-violently. They can't be seen unless they want to be humans that are around them feel anxiety. Their ships are small spheres, and they come here to study human deviation. We've got the Dries. They use humans for reproduction, creating hybrids. You got the Lang, which is a very small race, confuses fairies. The reason they abduct is unknown. The Dorsey is another race that eats humans and other aliens. The Alcobata, the reason is unknown. The Negumok, the reason is unknown. The X1Z, otherwise known as X, is doing medical experiments. The Killy-Tokert, the reason is unknown. And Shar is saying I'm saying the names too fast. So the Moviantian Kafik is supposed to be one of the races that made a contract with one of the presidents. And there's a lot of theories about that because you hear different stories about which race made the contract back in the 40s. Some say it was the Greys, some say it was the Reptilians, some say it was the Nordics. What's your thoughts on that?
My information kind of lends me to think that Eisenhower was in contact with some kind of the gray aliens, and not necessarily the small grays. I'm talking the
right
5 foot, version of the grays. For some reason, that seems to be what people are contemplating was this treaty that was struck at that point where the aliens were requesting to be able to abduct a certain amount of humans each year. And then, of course, they're offering in exchange for technology to the president and the military. And I believe at one point they accepted that idea, and then for some reason they realized that they couldn't hold the aliens to their part of the bargain. The aliens were abducting folks more than they said they were, and they weren't telling the powers that be who were the abductees, because that was part of the program. They were supposed to give them a list of people that were being abducted. But, that goes to the theory also is that these MyLab abductions, the military people who have been abducted, maybe they have a partial list, at least, of the people and the bloodlines that have been involved with them.
Mm-hmm. Now, with the MyLabs, I'm really, that's one area I haven't done a lot of research. I'm not really, I'm familiar with the basics of it, but I'm not sure which races are involved with the government as far as doing the MyLabs. Do you know much about that?
I don't know that it's necessarily the government working with an alien race as much as it is the government, black hat, black ops organizations abducting people who they know have been abducted to try to find out what the heck is going on. That the whole MyLab story seems to be that the government is trying to find out information about what's going on with these abductees that they can't get otherwise. So it lends me to believe that they don't have the relationship with these abducting aliens that that we might think they have, because they're still trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. And, that's kind of, I think, where some of the Men in Black stories come from, is, you talk about the MyLabs, but who's to say some of the, you've got different stories about the Men in Black. Some of them obviously weren't human by the way they acted, the way they walked, the 1920s vintage black limousines and whatnot. And the color of the skin, just their whole persona. But then you actually have the government agents, which you call Men in Black, that are human and, threaten the abductee, threaten the experiencer to silence them.
Yes.
And
in that,
and a lot of them happen, ironically, in Texas. I've heard a lot of Men in Black stories in Texas.
Interesting. Well, the very first story about a man in black trying to dissuade a UFO experiencer to not tell their story was the Maury Island incident, right here in
Right.
Matter of fact, if people have not seen the movie, the Maury Island incident, it's just an incredibly well done, locally produced film about the Maury Island incident that happened. Matter of fact, it was the very first modern era UFO sighting right here in South Puget Sound, just off the coast of Burien, Washington, where this tugboat operator basically saw 6 donut-shaped crafts about 30 feet in diameter that were hovering over South Puget Sound, and one of them seemed to be in trouble as far as wobbling and not being able to levitate like the others. So the other crafts gathered around this center one and somehow stabilized it. But the craft in the middle dripped off what they called slag. Came off of the craft, and actually some of it landed on the deck of the boat that this gentleman was piloting, and injured his 12-year-old son and almost broke his arm, I understand, and actually killed their dog. Of course, when this guy went to try to go home that night, and before he even told anyone about the incident, that's when this first Man in Black guy showed up out of the middle of nowhere, knocked on his door, and put the fear of God in him to not tell anybody about what he seen. Fascinating story.
I think the most intriguing aspect of that story is when they got the sludge, and they put it on the Air Force plane, and were taking it to California, and the airplane, the C-130 or whatever the Air Force plane was, crashed, and they still don't know why it crashed.
Exactly.
And that's, I think, the most intriguing aspect of that whole story. And so Jay's in the chat room talking about Betty and Barney Hill. That was another very intriguing story too, because that was the first in the 60s case where Betty was put under hypnosis and given the Zeta Reticuli star map.
Right.
And that was before Zeta Reticuli was even known as a star system. So, you get that kind of evidence. It's irrefutable proof that abductions happen.
Yes. Yeah, that was corroborative evidence of her regressive hypnosis sessions.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they actually had some physical evidence in a recreated map that actually turned out to be correct. But I think it was Marjorie Fish was the kind of amateur astronomer that figured out the star system from the directions that Betty was giving, to her hypnotizer, Dr. Benjamin. Forget his last name. Very famous ufologist and psychiatrist in Boston.
And getting a Travis Walton in the 70s, great movie Fire in the Sky was, but he's changed his, I won't say changed his story, he updated the story to his new biography, I believe it was 2 years ago, where basically when he jumped out of the truck, he ran under the tractor beam of the UFO, and they didn't mean to kill him. He actually died from the tractor beam. They abducted him, they brought him back to life, and they brought him back. And that shows the benevolence of the race, whereas they could have just left him there to die, but they didn't. They didn't mean to kill him. They brought him, they took him up, they fixed him essentially, corrected their mistake, even though it was really no fault of their own because he shouldn't have jumped out of his truck to go check it out anyway.
Right.
So, yeah, and I know he's got his new bio out, and I believe I haven't gotten to see it yet, but he puts out his new information. Now, where can people find the Montauk incident? Not Montauk, the Maury Island incident movie. Is that released, or can they find it on Netflix, or do you know?
Hold on a second. I got to get him back. I lost him.
Okay. And yes, folks. So the Maury Island incident, for those that aren't familiar with it, happened about a month to 2 months before the Roswell incident happened. So that was basically what many of the Washington ufologists call the Washington State Roswell. And it was, to us, just as famous as Roswell was, because, it was an actual craft that, put out evidence. Now,
okay, Coop, we got him back.
Where can people? Yeah, where can our listeners find the Maury Island incident video or movie?
I don't know that it's online, but they can check out just by Googling Maury Island incident. And Maury, by the way, is Maury, Maury Island.
Right.
Matter of fact, there's kind of an interesting synchronicity on this. One of the co-producers of that film is Scott Schaefer. Scott Schaefer is an old buddy of mine from the Almost Live in the 206 days when he was a comedy writer for Pat Cashman and John Keister and those guys, and then went on to produce films himself. And he's an interesting character, and the actors that they were able to cast in this film are just first-rate, very well acted, and the story is a fantastic story. So sometimes you have to catch certain. Well, here's a good example. Coming up here on April 5th in Burien is the Burien UFO Festival, and that film will be shown at the Burien UFO Festival, which is in Old Town Burien. I think the time frame is like 6 p.m. till 11 p.m. on April 5th. So that's probably the next the next you can actually see the film.
That's April 5th, 4 days from now?
Yeah, you got it. It's on I believe it's a Thursday night.
Okay.
It's just a one-day event, but it's a fascinating story. The entire Burien UFO Festival is wrapped around the Maury Island incident.
Okay.
Matter of fact, while we're talking about that subject, Eric, it is fascinating to know that the crash of that C-130, when they had the slag aboard and they were trying to take it to be analyzed, the military officers flying the plane, that was the first crash of a U.S. Air Force plane, because the day before, the Army Air Force was actually bifurcated from the Army into a new branch of the military called the Air Force. And that was the first death and crash of a U.S. Air Force plane.
Okay, I've got a question coming in from one of our listeners that's not in the chat room, but basically a lot of abductees stay quiet because they have a hard time talking to a researcher or a ufologist who has never experienced what they've been through, and I get that. I can completely get that. And so I've been in this field, as have you, Michael, for over 20 years. I've worked with hundreds of abductees, and I'm never going to say I can understand what they're going through, because how can you? You're being taken against your will. And you know, I get this fight a lot with the other side of the spectrum of these people that have wonderful experiences, and, you know, good for them. Aliens are great. Aliens are wonderful. I call them contactees. I don't call them abductees, because these are the people that basically, I guess what you would call them is space brothers. And, you know, contactees actually go back to the 40s and 50s. And you still get people today that, there's no such thing as a bad alien. Well, I beg to differ, because I see the brunt of the bad aliens all the time, working with abductees.
Yeah.
So I call them contactees. Abductees are the ones that are taken against their will, have medical experiments done on them, needles put to the, not to get graphic, but needles put to their eyes, through their ears, and, you know, wake up with the marks. They have no clue what's going on. And I really hate interviewing a client for the first time, hearing their description of what's happening to them, and then being the one to tell them, well, we have to do some further research on what you're going through, but what you're describing is an abduction experience. Because, you know, that tends to freak people out. So for anyone who's never been abducted, to tell an abductee that I can completely understand, and yeah, no, you actually can't. Because until you've been taken, me personally, I've never been taken. I know people that have. I see the emotion, I see the trauma, I see the terror, and it's not something I would ever wish on my worst enemy.
Right. Yeah.
Now, well, that's where I really get frustrated with the paranormal field in general, is because you see it in other paranormal groups, not teams, groups. You've got, you know, 11 billion, or a plethora of paranormal groups on Facebook for information. They're not teams that work with people. They're there for news, information, people that ask for help, that kind of thing. But you see all these different, you know, paranormal groups. Well, we don't. We only deal with spirits. because we don't believe in UFOs. How can you be in the paranormal field and not believe in UFOs? That would be my question. Because, you know, when it comes down to it, the client is being pushed downstairs by a spirit. Yeah, that's traumatizing. I get that. And we help them. But the abductee is just as traumatized, if not more, because we can stop a spirit. And up until 2 years ago, we couldn't stop the abduction. Now we can. But, you know, back then I was saying, I can stop a spirit from harming you, but I can't stop the abduction. That's worse. You know, and like I said, until I guess 2 years ago now we are stopping abductions. But I completely get our listeners' point in that, yeah, how can anybody that's questioning the abduction experience even remotely say they can understand or not understand when they haven't been taken?
Yeah. Well, and I understand that you've been successful as well as not only stopping abductions, but being able to shut down the implants in abductees as well. That's a fascinating subject.
And, you know, and that's the thing, though. It'd be great to find a surgeon that could actually physically remove the implant, because we could shut them down, but the races can turn them back on. So just because we shut them down once doesn't mean these are cases that we have to monitor all the time.
Yeah.
So Char's in the chat room. She wants to know how we're stopping the abductions. So like I said, we basically shut down, turn off the implant with a burst of energy. That elicits a response from whatever race is doing the abducting. They come down to check out, well, why was their implant turned off? Depending on which race it is, some of them like to combat, some of them don't. The ones that don't cut their losses, they don't come back. Some of them do. They figure we won't come back. Well, we do, until the abduction is completely stopped. That's how we stop abductions in a nutshell. I've heard some people say they use religion. They call the name of Jesus and the abductions stop. Well, that's great. It doesn't always work. I've had many people that have tried that and it doesn't work. Or whatever your belief system is. If you have enough faith in your own belief system, it can work. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, well, that's what we do.
Yeah. Well, it's a noble path you're on to be able to help people in this regard, paranormally and abduction-wise. There are not a lot of groups like Forest Moon Paranormal that can be as effective as you folks are. And may I point out, of course, your listeners know this. Maybe there's someone that's new out there. Is that you guys don't charge a dime to be able to do this good work, and that's an admirable, of course.
Right. And we do have our team show every third of the month. The third Saturday of the month is the team show, and that's where I actually get into the nuts and bolts of what the team does.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sitting here. I'm trying to multitask here and watch the chat room while I'm talking. So we're coming down to the last half hour of the show. So what do we see in the future of abductions?
You know, I'm very interested in the seemingly government disclosure campaign that's happening as we speak with the Tom DeLonge organization, To the Stars Academy, with the Pentagon and the Department of Defense confirming with the December 16th, 2017 newspaper article that unidentified aerial phenomena actually exist, and they actually have and confirm that they have a down craft, maybe more than one, and they are trying to analyze the alloys or the materials that these craft are made of. And one of the other issues that kind of goes by the radar that was also noted in that article was that they had confirmed that these downed craft that they have captured or are studying actually affect human physiology in some respects. They haven't told us exactly how they've affected human physiology, but I get the feeling that it has something to do with consciousness, that these materials are actually somehow conscious themselves. The actual craft itself, it has a connection to consciousness, and it either affects or it registers with human beings, which we've talked about the slider syndrome and people that have been in close proximity with aliens and or craft all of a sudden have much more psychic ability than they had beforehand. So that's the fascinating stuff that I see is coming down the road. And indeed, once they have confirmed that these craft exist, then the next step is going to be that obviously someone is flying them, and they've come from quite a long ways away. And if indeed they are here, why are they here? Maybe they're abducting the humans on this planet, and that needs to be explained as well. So the UFOI team that I'm a member of has actually come up with an idea to deal with the potential blowback that we see coming down the road very quickly here when people finally realize that this is a reality and their paradigm shifts are going to be totally changed almost overnight at one point. And they're going to start thinking, well, why didn't we know about this ahead of time? What kind of new energies, processes are we missing and have missed for 70 years plus? And why don't we have these medical, advances that potentially are out there? We are planning for this kind of blowback, I believe, that's coming down the road.
And yeah, completely agree. Where's the new energy sources? Where's the, there's going to be a lot of angry people when this gets fully disclosed, because, you look at a lot of different aspects of what the government's been hiding. One, clean energy. We don't have to be using coal or oil, or there's energy sources out there the off-worlders are using that the government's known about. Then you take the abduction side. If you look at the 1940s contract that the president made with an alien race, with the approval that this alien race could abduct, then you've got all the abductees that are going to be angry, going, "You sold us down the river. You made this contract for us to be abducted."
Yeah.
And, there's a whole large spectrum. And I made a post about this, I guess about a month ago now, that where's the ufology field going to go? What's the new shift that we have to make when it's a fact that there's UFOs? It's not going to be the client that's going, "I think I saw a UFO." Well, it's not a UFO now. Now it's going to be a known object, not an unidentified flying object. It's an extraterrestrial craft. So we've got to shift and step forward, and it's not going to be was it a UFO, but now which race is it, and what's their agenda for being here? Yeah. And we're fully ready to answer those questions as well. So we're already ready or preparing for that next step, because we already have some of those answers.
Yes, and I believe that that's why Forest Moon Paranormal and the UFO I team have been so successful at this point, and will be totally needed in the future. When in reality, at one point, the idea that trying to prove UFOs exist is going to be a moot point. And now we're going to try to determine how we're going to get people past that paradigm shift and be able to continue on with their lives and be productive. So that I'm excited for both of our groups to work together, and with other groups as well to. I hate to say it, but we need to start red pilling people very quickly, because it could happen very fast.
Yeah, and every year I do a message at New Year's of what I see for the year, and I got to say 2018 sure hasn't disappointed so far, and we're only into the first quarter of the year, and it's going to be interesting what the rest of the year is bringing. Now, I did want to ask you, because I know you work with Peter Davenport closely with Newport. Do you see a trend spiking with UFO sightings?
Yeah. Matter of fact, Peter has been telling me that his sighting reports have gone through the roof for this year already. And it's very possible that now that the government of the United States has actually confirmed the existence of these unidentified aerial phenomena, that people are feeling a little bit vindicated out there, saying, see, I told you so. I'm not crazy. I did see what I said I saw. And so they're being a lot less reluctant to make these reports. Matter of fact, the UFO ID has found the same thing, is that people are, the old stigma of trying to report one of these things seems to be melting away nowadays. People are seeing them and more than willing to tell us their stories. So that's what we do. We try to record those stories and disseminate them so people can feel like they're not alone.
Right, and that's what's great in that, because you do still have a stigma, and it is still hard to find abductees who will come out and get the help they need. And that's what's still sad about this society today is you do still have the what's the word I'm looking for? The doubters or the debunkers out there that, if you're an abductee or if you're experiencing paranormal, you still have enough people in society that are making them feel like they're crazy. And, like we were talking today, that's the second comment that the clients always tell me when they first come to us is, you're going to think I'm crazy. Not really, because we deal with, the paranormal in general all the time. There's no such thing as crazy. Not with what we deal with. So, exactly. It'll be nice when disclosure happens, in that then we're going to have the flood of people looking for help. And will we be ready for them? Of course we will. We'll be overworked, probably, but we'll deal with it. And ideally, we'll have the ones that will step up and want to join the team, and yours as well. That have experienced it. And what happens a lot of times is we do have clients that want to join the team once we get their case, closed out. Like you met some today.
Right.
I have no problem with that as long as they take training. Because I'm not going to have an untrained person out there trying to deal with the paranormal. Just waiting for an accident to happen. So we're coming to the close of the show. How can folks find UFO I-Team?
They can go to ufoiteam.com to find our website, and we've got a newsletter that sends out on a monthly basis they can sign up for. They can also follow us on Facebook, and every Wednesday evening at 6 to 8 p.m. we live stream our weekly meetings, so they can actually listen in and be a part of the group in an interactive measure while we have our meetings itself. So they can find us real easily by Googling UFO I-Team on the internet. The I is a lowercase I. Everything else is capitalized.
Okay. And, I need to sign up for your newsletter. I didn't know you had one. Learn something new every night. Corey and Markham, you got any comments you want to throw in there as we close out the show?
Not too much.
I remember, everybody. Go ahead.
Not too much for me. I mean, this has been a very interesting show. And for me, for the most part tonight, I've been doing a lot of listening, just kind of learning some of the stuff that's going on. It's, like I tell a lot of people, I know a fair bit myself, but I'm still fairly new into the field. So a lot of times I'll just sit here and listen. It's can be quite the learning experience.
Welcome.
Yeah, pretty much same here. Listening to Michael, he brings a whole different perspective to things. He sees it from like behind the mirror, through a mirror. A completely different lens and focus. I like hearing that. It's refreshing.
Well, thank you, Feature.
I'm looking forward to Michael's training next weekend when he talks about paranormal on the law, because that's an area that many teams and many people in general don't even think about, is the legal aspects of what we do. So looking forward to that as well. And it's going to be an exciting summer as we go to the concrete farmers market, and we have our FMP booth, and we do teach classes to the public, and have our Skywatch Bigfoot expedition, and a lot of things planned for this summer. I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting summer.
It is. It probably ain't going to happen this year. I hope it does, but I'd love to take UFO I-Team with us up into the Pleiadian mountains and some of the other mountain ranges here in the North Cascades, where there's I'm losing my voice, where we have a lot of UFO sightings and activity that's going on.
Yeah. Matter of fact, you just made mention of the peaks up by Mount Baker called the Pleiades. People don't really realize that they're actually mountains called the Pleiades have a history of sighting reports. Right.
Yeah, that's the ones I want to go up to. And I know half of it's in the U.S. and the other half is in Canada. Love to go up there. And I'm curious. I haven't been able to research, but I'm curious where, what year when they named those mountains the Pleiades, and where the name came from. I mean, I know it came from the star system, obviously, but why would they name that mountain range the Pleiades?
Exactly. That's got to be a fascinating story in itself. And
it does.
Yeah.
How many of them are there? I mean, in the range, is it just two? The range is two, or is it?
I believe it's just two, because there's one on the U.S. side and one on the Canadian side.
Oh, I didn't know if it was maybe 7 peaks or something. That's why they named it the Pleiades. Because that's basically 7 sisters is what that means. It's from Greek mythology.
Right.
Yeah.
So next week we're going to have Michael back on the show again as we talk about missing people in our forests. Kind of based on Palladi's work, but we'll see if there's any recent cases, and look at the cluster maps of the Washington State ranges, and see if we can't get some ideas and theories out there about those missing people in relation to missing 411.
That's a fascinating subject in itself, and just as a little bit of a teaser, on this. One of our I-Team members is a certified FAA drone pilot, which you have to have an actual pilot's license nowadays to fly drones. And he is telling me the regulations out there are that you can't even fly a drone in a state or national park. There's some admonition for doing that. So that kind of makes me wonder why they're excluding drone photography in state and national parks. That'll be fascinating discussion.
Well, you know, I have a college buddy that I went to Skagit Valley College back in 87, 88, and he's been a Washington State park ranger for, over at least the last 20 years. And when I first brought up this topic to him, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, and he was going to start looking into it, and I haven't gotten a clear answer from him yet. Of course, he was state parks versus federal, and it's the Federal Park Service that likes to hide the missing persons statistics.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, David Paulides was just at the Quinault Beach UFO Paranormal Summit, and about 2 weeks ago, and he gave his speech, of course, like he always does on the radio, and it's fascinating all the things that is going on, and supposedly they don't even keep records of missing people in those parks.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I've got my own theories, but I don't think there's any one theory you can look at. I think it's a conglomeration of a bunch of stuff going on. But
yeah.
You know, again, we'll get to that next week.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're a couple minutes early to closing out the show. Again, Irma, happy birthday. For the religious folks out there, happy Easter. And I hope you all have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and look forward to training next weekend.
Well, Eric, I don't know if you have 3 minutes and 44 seconds, but we actually do have the UFO I-Team's new haunting ballad, the Ballad of Mel's Hole, if you wanted to go out with that.
Yeah, let's go out with that.
Well, I think people might like this. We'll see if it becomes a hit. Here we go. Give it a shot.
All right.
Hang on a second. I got to turn the volume up here so we can catch this. See why it's not.
And this is an EVP, correct?
Yeah, right. This is just it's not a record at this point, but one of these days it might be. We'll see here. Okay. See if I can do it. If not, we'll have to skip it till later.
All right. And for listeners that aren't sure what an EVP is, it's electronic voice phenomena, and that is what paranormal investigators pick up on digital recorders, or even handheld tape recorders can pick up EVP.
Yeah, it's too low. I'll have to figure out next time how to do this. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. That's quite all right. So, yeah, because we do get new listeners that don't know anything about EMF or electromagnetic frequency or electronic voice phenomena, and you kind of have to go into explaining what that is. That's actually where spirits can communicate through digital recordings, things of that nature. And UFO I-Team has one. We'll get to listen to that next time. So, Corey, go ahead and take us out of here.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to get this done for the evening. I would like to thank our panel tonight, Mr. Eric Markham, our FMP scientist, and Michael Hall of UFO I-Team. Join us next Saturday at midnight Pacific Standard Time as we discuss missing people. Where do they go, and is it paranormal? You can find us on Spreaker.com, SpacedOutRadio.com, The Fringe FM, and KSVU 90.1 FM. I would like to thank all of our listeners because without you, there is no S4. And remember, keep your eyes to the skies.